as we enter the initial stages of an alt season, it won't be the Fudsters with which we will have to deal with. It will also be the doubters. As other altcoins jump in price, many will leave this ship into other coins, which have jumped, say, significantly 10, 20, 30% a day. And as the price is higher, they will actually go there and wait there for the next jump in price. And at the same time, another coin will actually pop up in price. So when this happens, you will miss the initial takeoff on any other asset. So if you are in one asset, why you are there has to be understood.
As the stock price was going the wrong way, everything inside the company was going the right way. And we didn't need to go back to the capital markets. We didn't need more money. The only reason, a financial bust like the internet bubble bursting is, makes it really hard to raise money. But, we already had the money we needed. So we just needed to continue to progress.
So if we pay attention to anyone who have become successful in investing, it's all about what Bezos just illustrated. If you are blinded about the price of the asset, then you will actually miss the growth of fundamentals. Hence, you will be surprised when the asset starts appreciating in price, or else when the fundamentals starts to reflect in the price. So instead of getting surprised, being prepared to take that surprise as happiness will be the best choice. Welcome to the Scientific Investor family, where we discuss crypto and science behind investing regularly. When we slowly transition into a national digital currency era, or the CBDC era, the need for a global bridge asset is increasing. When you compare our project with other projects, never forget that in a central bank digital currency era, the power will be more concentrated on the central banks. So the power of commercial banks, commercial companies will actually reduce. Even though the partnership with commercial banks and other institutions are actually good, it is not the ultimate success factor. It is the relationship with the central banks, IMF, Bank of International Settlement, World Bank, etc., which will actually matter. If the Fudsters generate doubt and you just jump the ship to another asset, then in my opinion, you may feel better in short term looking at the fluctuation and slight upward movement, say 10%, 20%, even 100%. But considering the entire market cycle and the achieved return on your investment, you may not be happy at the end of that day.
On the U.S. government to do two things. The first is to demonstrate national leadership through strong public support at the highest levels of government, and the second is to adopt a national action plan to coordinate all the stakeholders.
It's important to speak in one voice.
So do understand that the change is here. It's not coming. And when that is happening, you need empowerment, meaning knowledge has actually improved, challenged and increased constantly, or it vanishes. So I completely agree with that. And here in the Scientific Investor family, we go through different information on a regular basis to update the Scientific Investor family and to stay empowered.
Digital payments, my hope, and we are working hard on that. Oli Ren is a strong supporter of these initiatives, and all governing council are determined in that direction. We will see digital payments.
So there is no doubt that we are heading towards a digital payment era. And during that time, this can be considered as a transition point. We really need to understand what the new payment system looks like. Transforming the payment systems in Europe is a book, that's in Springer. And if you actually go into the book, it's actually a long details. But when you take a look at 1.7, a closer look at distributed public ledger technology, you can actually understand some key areas where the interoperable protocol for clearing transaction between two ledgers, settlement in a central bank money, and other aspects are actually highlighted. So when they actually talk about this, what you have to understand is the substitution of this trust by regulation, legislation and auditing is a consensus mechanism of distributed public ledgers. But this will actually come true slowly. It won't be like, just one step and jump into that. Instead, we are looking at, like, finally, it is important to mention that in a meta competition between interoperable banks with competition in the market, business platforms with competition for the market, and distributed ledger systems, there are two developments. The different generic characteristics of three antagonistic are summarized. Now, in the table, when we go down, we can actually understand that it is actually talking about current system and the interoperable layer. So in order to understand that a bit more clearly, say this is page number 13 of the document from Bank of International Settlements, Committee on Payment and Settlement System, the role of central bank money in payment system. So when we actually understand this, you can actually look forward, like they are actually pointing this out way back. So that's not like it happened yesterday, but they actually concentrate on this thing way far. So if we actually understand this, you can actually say, no, how can this be? Like they were actually looking at this way back, 20 years back. How can this happen? But when you actually read through this, you'll actually understand this. The increase in cross-border flows, a result of capital liberalization and financial globalization, has important implications not only for correspondent banking, but also for access of central bank accounts and credit. Now, when the important and key elements are here, when you read through this, you can actually understand that there have been requests for central banks to provide new or improved services that may affect the way in which central bank money is used. Services such as long operating hours, interoperability between systems, liquidity saving mechanisms, or even multi-currency functionalities. So, if they say that this just came 5 years before, 6 years before, 7 years before, for me, understanding that is kind of a bit difficult. Now, yes, even previously I stated that there is some part of, that conspiracy thing somewhere, which is kind of ambiguous. We can actually understand that clearly, but it is somewhere. And we understand now that, from BIS, IMF, World Bank, they are all actually pointing towards a new financial system. Now, if we look back in 1980s, we will actually understand that they were actually concentrating on a new currency, international currency, right? So looking at how things are evolving, we actually understand that central banks were actually planning this from way back. The supranational organizations were actually giving ideas, research outputs for central banks from a long time. So when someone is coming to you and stating, no, how can you become rich or wealthy by investing in something which just started 5 years, 6 years back? So then for them, you have to actually have to tell them this. This was planned way before. They were all working on this from a long time. Now it's the time to reap profit, or at least it's actually going to start that kickoff point or start of the blast off. Now, when that happens, it's not only the price which will actually blast to the roof. It will also be the adoption rate. As central banks kicks in, the adoption rate will actually jump way high. Now, this is also, the page number 13 and 14 here. Page number 12 and 13 here. In this document, it is actually talking about how the interoperability actually works. Now, if you want to see the title, it looks like this: Payment System Interoperability and Oversight, the International Dimension. Now, this is from a financial service group who do the research, and they actually gave the output. Now, yes, the entire document is valuable, but based on our time limitation, we are looking at two different payment systems: decentralized payment system and a centralized payment system. So in this one, you can actually see country 1, country 2, and how it actually works. So you separately have a settlement agent, the operations of that are actually controlled here. So it works like this, right? Whereas in this one, in the decentralized one, you can actually see country 1, country 2, country 3, country 4. So when you are actually entering into a new network where you can actually instantly flip your coin without going from one to another and then changing, say for example, now from South Korea to India, if I'm sending money, they will first change Korean won into the US dollar, then to Indian rupees if I'm going through a bank. So with the SWIFT network, it kind of works like that, because they don't directly have a correspondent banking relationship. I guess that's the reason they don't actually directly convert Korean won into Indian rupees. Whenever I go, they first convert it into dollars and then change that back into that one, because currently dollar is the reserve currency, right? But when we enter into a new system where you have a bridge asset, that is not actually required. So you are not actually going from one exchange first and then the exchange to the local currency. So first they're actually exchanging it to the reserve currency and then to the local currency. So 2 times you actually have to actually go through that. So when that is happening, we all know that there is a sell price, there is a buy price. So the spread is always taking money out of your pocket when you're doing that kind of remittance. So in this particular area, when you have that decentralized payment system, you can actually do payments from one country to any other country just using one global bridge asset. And that kind of reduces the friction in that. And that is where we can see Japan, China, and other countries are actually coming out with their own digital assets. So when we see the movement like this, what we actually have to understand is, say for example, the background here is they are actually coming into a central bank digital currency era, and the feasibility of central bank digital currency from a technical perspective, collaborative with other central banks and relevant institutions, and they're actually considering introducing one, right? So when we actually come down, you can actually see it is important to develop a central bank digital currency. And when you consider that, you have to understand both centralized and decentralized type have its own pros and cons. In the case of massive transaction, for retail use cases in advanced countries, it is better to adopt a centralized type. Now, if you actually look RippleNet, it's a centralized type. Now with the new changes which they have made, they can actually be inside the RippleNet, and whenever they need, they can use on-demand liquidity. They don't directly have to hold it as of now. Once the regulatory clarity is there, banks can actually use digital assets, hold that in their own books. They don't need a separate exchange and go through that, right? So in that case, where the amount of transaction is limited and resilience and future possibility is prioritized, there is a room to consider decentralized type. So they're not neglecting the decentralized type fully. Now, when we actually consider Bitcoin and the central bank digital currency, when they are coming together, what you have to understand is this is actually a good thing for the entire crypto assets. While national cryptocurrency might not be directly resultant in the adoption of Bitcoin, it certainly doesn't harm the industry. As more people take note of the technology and as more countries consider the regulations and legalities behind cryptocurrencies, because when they are actually coming out with a digital asset, they are going to actually have that regulatory framework for sure, because they are enrolling it, right? But what you have to keep in mind is when they are coming out with that kind of regulation, which will completely suit their CBDC and some others, some others will be select few. So get your concentration. If you're looking at privacy coins, the chances are that it's going to be really hard to survive. It's good, like the Fed or other agencies will be tracking down and trying to track it down somehow at one point, and they will actually come and take that, cut off that. That's for sure. But we might not actually see more sustainable regulations in the industry as a whole. That is what I was talking, right? We might see more sustainable regulations in the industry as a whole, but they will actually put out these regulations based on their parameters, meaning that central bank digital currency. So as they move further, they will be looking at that one for sure. And when we actually look at the price, we can actually, this is an analysis which actually says there is no end in sight to XRP's downtrend as transaction volume wanes. Now, my perspective to this one is like, I don't actually consider this as legitimate. Precisely, when we are talking about this one, what I will say is when the volume was actually surging, say all-time highs in all different corridors, was the price actually pumping? No, right? So that doesn't actually mean when the volume goes down, the price will also go down. If the volume is rising and the price is not reflecting that, that's not the perfect time for that. The price is not rising because of one factor, which Jeff Bezos directly stated it, right? At one point, he was actually saying that if you actually look here, the price is just a matter of offer and demand. So that is the market cycle, the human psychology. And to understand that psychology, we need to understand money and human beings. But being an investor, what you have to understand is the fundamentals of that asset in which you have invested in. So as we move through one by one, different documents, one by one, central bank documents, research publications, supranational organization like BIS, their reports, we can actually understand that this is currently, diverting to that one, because we previously checked all the different documents from 2015, 2018, 19. This one is from 2003, so that's like way back. What you have to understand is from that time they were actually considering this, and they actually know that this is coming in. So here, if you read, the conversion exists that central banks avoid competing with commercial banks in most of the payment service provided to the non-bank public. So it is this conversion that generates the economy between bank notes. They are available to all, and the central bank accounts, they are available only to some. So this was a consideration from back in early 2000s, but now it is automatically and slowly changing. And when that change is actually coming in, you have to actually understand now the non-bank financial institutions are getting more power. Say for example, there have been requests in some economies from non-bank financial institutions which are active in payments, or even from certain non-financial institutions for direct access to central bank accounts and payment system. This is back in 2003. So this is not a conspiracy, but it looks like one, or at least something planned very precisely. And it's like each move is like moving in chess, thinking deeply and moving one by one. So that is exceptional if you actually ask me. So, and when we actually see recent documents like last 5 years, then last 3 years, last 2 years, and 2020, we can actually see that one which is which was actually looked upon 20 years back is actually being implemented step by step, one by one. So if you still doubt on the asset which you are in, then looking at the price, it may actually confuse you. Say XRP has just broken past crucial downtrend. Now in that particular downtrend, he's actually stating it's kind of short term, it's not that long term view. But when you actually come into that, now this one was actually towards BTC, whereas this one is for dollar. In this one, it is actually weekly chart. So when you look at the weekly chart, you can actually see that it is kind of finding a support in that region, but that doesn't mean that it won't actually go down and retest that 0.12 area. Now if that retest is happening, we don't know, we are not online 24/7, we are not checking the price. So in order to get that, if you can put say 3%, 3% or 2%, like that's what I do. It's not a financial advice, okay? 3%, 2%, in some areas say 0.12, 0.3, 0.13, 0.15. If you put buy orders like that, I actually do that. So if the price actually even wicks down, I won't actually miss that opportunity. But if it is actually going down with that downward trending channel, then a possibility of a lower on 0.11 is actually possible. So keep your mind clear that that can actually happen. And this author is also actually stating that, but don't bet on a rally. There can be a bounce after getting this support, but it won't be the final ultimate bull run. But this is crypto assets, we don't know, it can also be the final bull run. So if you are already accumulated enough, then you won't be missing out on that rally, right? If you have that one, then that is cool, it doesn't actually matter. So guys, that's all for today, and if you like the content, do hit the like button, and I'll actually put these documents in the further reading section. So if you actually want to go through that, you can actually go through that. I'll meet you guys on the next one. Bye for now.